Well, the stock market bears have been having some fun, but be careful here because the bulls may just want to have a rip your face off rally in the near future. So that's what we're going to prepare for today. Yesterday's video, I discussed that we were getting into oversold conditions, and I'm going to show you more specifically what I'm talking about. Sorry that the audio quality is bad. I'm recording from a laptop. I'm currently moving from one house to another house as it stands right now. Now, where are we now? I'm going to follow up on yesterday's video. This right here is the golden zone, this little rectangle over in here, and you can see the price action got below this year-to-date anchored VWAP, which is we're anchoring it to the start of the year, and it tells us via price and time and volume where price is currently at and where the average buyer is at. So you can see price is below that. It means the average buyer since the beginning of the year is underwater. That's based off of price, time, and volume. And as you can see right here, we're moving into a big area of confluence for support. This is why I'm saying, okay, the bulls may want to have you rip your face off rally or some sort of a bounce, or potentially just consolidate here before potentially getting hit further. So what are those levels that I'm discussing? Well, this right here is the 50% to 61.8% retracement level. We called that the golden zone yesterday. It's also in line with this downsloping channel. Upsloping channel. It's also in line with this 50-day moving average. It's not too far off from the 200-day moving average. It's started to flatten out there too as well. But let's add a little bit more to that. Let's zoom in on the 15-minute time frame. What do you see here? Well, we're right here. We just doodled around the lower expected move for the week. So that level is 39984. So it's highly likely that we come back into this. Remember, 68% of the time, the price action will close back within here. It's actually even higher on the S&P 500. Now, what I did find interesting today is you can see this red line down here. This is the year-to-date anchored VWAP. So you can see when we broke down it actually held now as a level of resistance. So if you do want to be more bullish, you want to see price action reclaim that clearly and hold above that. Now, even if we claim above it, remember, depends on where price comes. If it's a strong move all the way up, understand that the 5-day moving average is still declining. So it could, take some time here for this to, work itself out for the bulls. But just remember, sometimes they just want to have you rip your face off rally. It sucks more people in and then we get hit right back down. This is what happens in very volatile times. Also to note here on the 15-minute time frame, you have a positive divergence on the RSI. You have a positive divergence there building on the price momentum oscillator. Okay, so as we already discussed, be careful here. Why? Well, because there's a lot of confluence for support. We're at the lower weekly expected move, which, by the way, if price could get out further through this, it leaves the opportunity for a 2 sigma move, which we will discuss really quickly here. I'll just discuss it. That can take us, a 2 sigma move can take us to around that 390 to 388 on the week. So if, remember, dynamic hedging kicks in and more selling continues, we can get a move all the way down into here, which would actually be a very strong level of support as well to keep an eye on. Why? Well, it would bring us right here. That would be a 2 sigma move still into that golden zone, and we'd still be around all that confluence of support. So as it stands right now, there's an opportunity to sell off, but there's an opportunity to see a bounce here. So I hope that I hope that makes sense. All right, so now we want to go over the zones really quick. The zones are something that I share with my Patreon group. If you want to join my Patreon, you got to also have a Discord, right? Discord's free. If you don't have an account, set one up, and then you could sync it, and you'll get access to all, my trade ideas, my weekly expected moves, which I track like 40 products. You'll get the zones, stock market indicators, which are the ones that I share here on the stock market brief, the charts. You'll get links to those, and then I have like my watch list and so forth, and you get access to the community. I do all of this for $9 a month. So all of these episodes, by the way, that I do on a daily basis, they're brought to you by my Patreon group. That's why I'm able to do this full time here on YouTube and provide this type of stuff for this content for free. So this is kind of behind the paywall. It gets access to the community and a little bit more stuff there as well. So first and foremost, I want to go ahead and go into the zones. This is what I'm looking at right now. I'm starting to notice a lot of green show up on the screen, which if you don't know what this is, think of these as kind of like Bollinger Bands, but it's a little bit more technical than that. It's using math from Benoit Mandelbrot. So it's like fractals and the Hurst component. And it's really just telling us, hey, when things get overextended, when things are, overbought, oversold, and it gives us a good idea here on what's, toward the low end of the zone or the upper end. And this is just a quick way to looking at it, but you can also look at the close, and then you can say, okay, here's the lower end of it, there's the higher end of it, where is price within that? But I'm starting to notice a lot of green, which means that price action is getting towards the lower end. And typically when you get to the lower end, you can potentially see some relief bounces take place. Now, that's not always the case, okay? So what I like to do here is also track that midline. The midline can act like, think of it as a weighted moving average in a way. And this moving average, think of it as, if it's moving down every day and price action's below it, the trend is kind of moving lower. But if price action could get above it and you start to see this number rise, that could be a good sign that we're going to start to see some relief there as well. Okay, so yeah, I'm starting to notice a lot of green here on these products over here, but not only those products. If I zoom in, you can take a look at the S&P 100. So I share the entire S&P 100 on this Excel document that I post in the Discord as well. But you can see a lot of green showing up on the screen. These right here are the S&P 100. They're in order of market cap. So it's, Apple's up top because it's a higher market cap, and then on your way down. And what you'll see here is they take a look at NVIDIA, right? NVIDIA's reporting earnings. Where was it? It's basically saying, hey, 2% downside to 11.34% upside. But remember, we reported earnings. So this is going to open up, right? If you've been watching NVIDIA earnings, it's going to open up higher. But where was it? It was at the lower part of the range. Okay, so it's not exactly the areas where you'd want to short, and go figure, NVIDIA is going to see some rip and rally, or potentially, right, open up very high tomorrow. Let's go continue on, take a look at global ETFs. Take a look here. So the dollar's been up, right? We're going to show a dollar chart here momentarily. The dollar moved up higher, and look at what's happening over here on all these global ETFs. I'm not going to go through each and one individually. If you take a look at commodities, we're starting to see a lot of green on the screen. So those are kind of been backing off a little bit. If you take a look at currencies, this is the dollar right over here. This is actually more towards the middle to the upper middle, right? So if you can see here, it's closed at 28.27 for UUP, and the midpoint is at 28.18. So it's just above the midpoint there, which could be bullish. If it starts falling below it, that could be a little bit more bearish there. If we take a look at fixed income, it's getting more towards the lower ends of the ranges. As you can see, a lot of 20s, right? So that means if I go to look at something like TLT over here, it's looking at 101.31 is where it closed, and the low end of this zone right now, remember, these are dynamic, they're constantly changing, 98.80. So hey, perhaps, if I go back to the zones up here and I look at 10-year yield, so TNX, oh, what do you know? It's at the upper range. So this closed at 39.23. Oh, and then the upper range is at 40.92. So is this telling me that, hey, could we potentially try to take a scalp trade or look for a potential bounce in TLT in the near future? Or vice versa, can we just see here if the 10-year yield's going to be backing off? Well, it's a strong possibility how things are lining up here. If you also want to zoom in on volatility, I share volatility. So we're seeing a lot of them upper end of the range. You can take a look at, I track a bunch of different volatility products. So the VIX, RVX, which is Russell Vol, oil volatility, NASDAQ volatility. These are just VIX futures over here, which is an important one to watch. These ones are getting towards the upper end of those ranges as well, which means, hey, they could potentially start backing off. This is one that I just added on here recently. I was just watching the VIX and these other products, but I figured I'd add in the VIX futures there. That's actually, so if you're in the Discord, pay attention to that. That was just recently added. And then also China equities. This is something new that I added because some China equities have been doing incredibly well. But notice here, all the green on the screen there too as well. So a lot of them have been backing off, which doesn't necessarily mean, people, that we're going to start to see a rip your face off rally, but it's not the exact area where I'd say, hey, I'm going to short here. Or if I was short, I might be looking at these now to potentially cover. So I want to go into some BP charts. This helps us. These are based off of, this is the bullish percent index, okay, for different products, different assets. I'll show you. And they're based off of the tic-tac-toe, charts, the point and figure charts, the X's and O charts, okay? So what I'm looking at here, what I like to do is I like to apply an RSI, and it tells me when things get oversold and overbought on these BP charts, and it could tell us when to let our foot off the gas a little bit. I like to look for positive divergences, negative divergences. You can see here, right, RSI got pretty overbought for a while, and then that marked the top right there and started moving down. Hey, it got a little into oversold condition, put a positive divergence right there as price went down. Boom, we saw a bounce. And now what? Well, we got overbought, and now we're starting to see consolidation or a little bit of a pullback. So I want to show you here, NASDAQ Composite, okay, this is the big broad market. We are pointing down and we're crossing through that 50 line, right? We've been seeing weakness, so it's backing off. The NYSE bullish percent index, it's below 50. It's pointing down, right? Because the price action is backing off. But this is where it gets interesting. The S&P 500 bullish percent index has moved now into oversold conditions. So that doesn't mean that it can't go down further. What I like to do is wait for a possibility of a positive divergence or something like that to form. But just note now, right, we noted it right here when it got what? Overbought, okay, right here. Where was that? Right here, which marked what? It marked a turning point in the market. So I'm just pointing that out now as we're moving into these areas of confluence of support. Now, if we look at BPOEX, this is like, okay, well, the S&P 500, it's also a broad market. Okay, well, let's look at the S&P 100. Okay, it's moving into oversold conditions there too as well. And oversold can stay oversold for a while, and crashes, right? They happen from oversold conditions too as well. So you got to be aware of all of that. The NASDAQ 100, moving into oversold conditions. The 10-year yield, so if we start to look now, those are the bullish percent index, how I showed you, right? Getting some oversold conditions. What could potentially bring this market down further? Well, the 10-year yield has been seeing a nice rise here. We backed off slightly today, but if we do start to continue to see strength here, it could put more pressure on heavy growth names as we've seen in the past. And then the other big one to watch right now is the dollar. It was actually pretty strong today, which tells me like, hey, be careful here, because if the dollar wants to start firing off, this could put a lot of pressure on various equities and obviously a bunch of different other assets, including commodities as well. And if it does, remember, like, so when the dollar broke down like this, that started, right? That was right around that October low, and you can see the market started roaring up higher. Now what we're starting to see is the dollar starting to, fire off. And what is the S&P 500 doing? Well, it's backing off. That's why I say, okay, the correlation is strong. If the dollar wants to get strong here, be very careful. The last chart I'll finish off with is the Saylor to Schiff tool. If you don't know what this is, I have this a link in the description for how I use this. But right now it is still on a buy signal, but it is pointing down. So I'll be watching to see if it crosses down and has a weekly close below that zero line, because the last weekly closes that we got, we saw some sell side, some sell side. And by the way, on the sell side, on every single one of these crosses that it's crossed over, or every big Bitcoin crash, it has actually caught it pretty spot on there too as well. So I'm going to continue to watch this as it continues to work right now. Maybe it's not going to work in the future at some point, but as it stands right now, it's been pretty darn helpful tool for navigating Bitcoin and heavy risk assets. So risk on type assets. That's all I got for you, everybody. Have a wonderful night.